Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. I'm excited to bring in a very special guest today who we've partnered with to help clients with sales growth using a full funnel approach from cold to warm to closed. And Jennie is the CEO at Virago Marketing. She's an expert in marketing within the supply chain industry, so you don't have to teach her about supply chain. And she's helped many companies with media exposure and sales growth. And we both actually served as a director of marketing for supply chain tech companies. And we actually both worked for Trimble within marketing as well. So how are you doing today, Jennie?
Pretty good. Pretty good. It's warming up outside. I feel like I'm the weather lady. Like, how are you doing? Well, it's based on the weather. It's sunny. But it's not
Springtime
raining
is
right now.
arriving. Finally, springtime is arriving, right?
Well, we did have a frost over this morning here in Cleveland, Ohio. So woke up and the car was completely frosted over and the grass was completely white. And I was like, no.
Oh, man. Well, if it makes you feel any better, one of my really good friends sent me a picture on Saturday, not too long ago, and they had 5 inches of snow in Denver. So I was
Oh,
like, what? I'm like,
I'm glad I
thank
don't have
goodness
that.
I don't live in Denver.
Absolutely.
Oh, man. Oh, well, I was excited to have you on the show today. We're going to be talking about three key trends in supply chain marketing for 2024. So,
Yep.
first of all, I'd like to go back a ways, right? Back to
Okay.
early in your career. When did you decide that marketing was a good fit for you, and kind of how did you get it started with this?
So, when I first enrolled in college, I wanted to go for computer science. And then I learned how much math was involved. Not for me. How about communication? So, I majored in communication, really enjoyed that. And then I got my master's in communication. And I got an internship at a PR agency. And so we would send out these press releases. And so there was one time when he was like, okay, we're gonna send this press release and we're gonna get seven people to sign up for it. And I said, how are you even gonna track that? Like, how do you know you're sending this press release and then seven people are gonna sign up for it? Because back then they didn't have those trackable links in the press release, which is still like a marketing side, right? So that is when I really learned that I love data and tracking the data, and I need to know. I need to know where this came from. I need to know what they did, what their journey was like that led to the conversion so that we could repeat that. And I knew it wasn't sending a press release. That's really great for awareness, but these people were signing up for a service, and the press release was not the only thing. Like, they had to go to the website, or they had to fill out the form, like the tracking, right?
Right.
So when I was at the PR agency, I was like, you know what, I don't feel 100% comfortable with sending the press release and tying that to seven people signing up for the service. So I really was like, nope, we got to use the tracking URLs. I was always like thinking, like, how can I track this? How can I get more data? How can I prove this? Which kind of led me to the digital marketing side with PPC and SEO, and just being able to test messaging and test channels, and then being able to track all the way through and say, hey, I allocated $10 to this, I got X amount, and this is what that journey looked like, and what the value was for those dollars spent. So going back to an internship, working at a PR agency and saying, I need more data, I need to track this. And that led me into kind of digital marketing.
Right. I had an experience early in my career, like late 90s, and we had a demo download from a website, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm exactly like that. I said, I want to track how many demos we're getting based on all the things we're doing every month and see what's kind of driving that. And so I would come into these meetings with the owner and his nephew, and it was an Appian logistics software that turned into Trimble eventually, like it was a part of Trimble, right? But anyways, just tracking it, watching it. Is that helping? Is a mailer helping? Is this helping? Is that helping? And so forth. But I've always been the same way. Like, I don't want to just do something and hope. I want to do something and see what
Oh,
happens and
yeah.
measure it. So I'm exactly like that as well. Um,
Yep.
And you know, you and I, Jenny, we've utilized services from each other's companies, right? So I've known Aaron Huff on your team, your chief content strategist, for
Yep.
about 15 years or so. And he
Mhm.
and I have worked on articles together when he was senior editor at Commercial Carrier Journal.
Yep.
And you know, you know this. He told me he had arrived at Virago, and I said, "Well, what are you guys doing?" And then we all started talking. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, yeah." So we have this synergy in
Yep.
terms of knowing the supply chain industry, knowing transportation, knowing technology, and helping companies basically build a great foundation and then get it in front of a lot of people that could be the buyer of that, right?
Right.
So it's like from foundation of the house to building the walls to putting the roof on the whole 9 yards. So that's what's really, really fun. So it made perfect sense for me for us to work together. I
Yeah.
mean, just your
Yeah.
background, your team, what we do, what you do made a whole lot of sense. So what is it that makes Virago Marketing different from traditional marketing agencies?
Well, I think sometimes traditional marketing agencies will spread themselves out and they'll offer services across an array of industries. We solely focus on the transportation logistics space because it's where we're from. Everybody that works at Virago has worked at a transportation logistics company of some sort in some sort of capacity. And it's what we know. So we can get up and going very quickly. You don't have to like define things for us like what is LTL and ELD and HOS. Like we're down with all the acronyms. So
Right.
we don't
Right.
have to create that dictionary. So we can move very quickly. And being from the industry, we understand the landscape. We know what shows to go to. We know who's going to be at the shows. We have lists from the shows. We know what channels, what publications. We've got relationships with the different publications in the space. It's just what we know. And so it's where we could provide the most value. And so we live in this space.
Absolutely. I know it from knowing your team and knowing you. Don't have to tell them what LTL and TMS means, right?
Yeah.
What is that? You
Yep.
guys, you got that covered. You're way past that. So you guys recently created a marketing insights report
Yep.
through a survey of over 100 supply chain industry leaders. And that report is called 2024 Outlook and Trends Supply Chain Marketing. And it's available for free download at viragomarketing.com. Be sure and go check it out, everybody. I couldn't wait to get my hands on it. And I participated in it as
Yeah.
well. Couldn't wait to get my hands on it. And it's just chock full of great information about this industry and trends. So, based on the data, what are three key trends that you saw from that data and from the executive feedback?
Well, I think what was interesting were the top three objectives. And so first one being gaining market share, the strategic positioning, customer retention, partnerships and collaborations. I keep saying 2024 is like the year of partnerships. Like there might not be a lot of sales going on, but kind of building that infrastructure and that ecosystem that can then help support when a sale could come through. The other thing I think through building the partnerships in the ecosystem opens opportunities for you. So if you're going to integrate and build with a complementary solution, well, they might their clients, customers might be looking for services that you offer, and because you bolt on and exemplify their solution, then that's an easier door to get through. So partnerships are really big for 2024. We've been doing a lot of strategic positioning, like you don't want to sound like everybody else. You have to stand out. So going to
Right.
market, being able to communicate who you are and what's unique about you and your offering is extremely important right now. I don't know how many TMSs are on the market, right? But if you can't communicate your value to the market, you're just in a sea of options, right? So you got to stand out and be able to communicate and position yourselves in a way that the market's going to see your value over the other options. Lead generation was probably not like that renowned. Everybody's after leads. but really focusing on optimizing content, offering irresistible stuff, and then diversifying your market channels. So exploring new channels, testing different platforms. There's a lot of AI solutions out there. A big one is podcasting. How many podcasts popped up in the last 2 years? It was like COVID happened, right? And then everybody started a podcast. Why? Because they were like, oh, I'm having these conversations. I'm going to start recording them. This will be fun. At least that's the story that I've heard from a few people. So podcasting is a big new one. I see a lot more freight companies launching TikToks, which I think is really interesting. So I'm kind of following what's happening over there and what content they're putting out and how they're tracking it or how it's performing. And then like the optimized content, making sure that you're creating your buyer's journey. You've got CTAs on your content, you've got landing pages, you got blogs, social media. So like really driving those conversion paths through everything that you're doing. And then finally, the third objective I would say is increasing brand awareness. And this kind of goes hand in hand with the strategic positioning. We've been doing a lot of key messaging frameworks and then taking that and rebuilding websites to now communicate their new positioning and then flowing that all the way through like sales collateral and content and decks like that. So having that consistent brand messaging, the content marketing, telling your story, and then social media has been huge. A lot of people, especially those embracing podcasts, are like my social media, the engagement, the feedback I get, like it's just it's blowing up. And so I think, exploring these new channels and taking advantage of other channels like social media and podcasting, things like that. Marketing's kind of evolving. And I think it has a lot more to do with your personal brand. And so even though that didn't necessarily come out in the research because we didn't talk about it, having conversations with a lot of supply chain market leaders, really focusing on their personal brand. And I want to get on podcasts and I want to tell my story and I want speaking opportunities. I think it's really important to continue to build your brand alongside your company's brand.
Right, absolutely. And I talk a lot about value attraction, right? What you're doing is getting the right message in front of the right people. And then what we do is sales automation, right? After the foundation is built, get that in front of the right hundreds or thousands of the right people.
Right. Yeah. That's
So,
why our partnership works so well because we work with the clients to help tell those stories and we do the case studies and we do the white papers or the guides and the blogs. And then you're able to build an infrastructure that helps that person create one-on-one connections and provide and communicate the value that we've created for them to help tell their stories. And I did it firsthand. It works.
Yep. And you guys ran a press release or you wrote a press release for us and it was picked up by over 300 outlets, over 300 news outlets. Having a third-party article about us that we can put in front of enough of the right people. Imagine you as a person out there getting that kind of coverage and then using that to get in front of somebody. When it comes from a third party like that, let's just say CCJ or Transport Topics or whoever it is. When it comes from them, it's a whole different thing than if it's me
earned
saying.
media. It's earned media. So, we pitch those articles, we send those press releases and they pick up on it and they're like, yes, we'd love to tell this story. And then they'll typically do an interview with our client to help build that out and maybe do a byline, depends on what article or what story they're working on. But typically we can get our clients pretty good coverage in those industry publications.
Right. Absolutely. It's picked up by many actually transportation industry media outlets, and I say media outlets because these days it's almost all online. Almost their entire viewership, readership is online at this point, But, why would you say is that somebody would look at that from a third party, as opposed to me going out there and doing, let's say I record a 20-minute webinar, but it's me talking about myself, right? Why is it that somebody would take a third party and it actually just helps you grow so much faster like that?
Well, I think there's multiple reasons why. First, people don't want to hear you talk about yourself.
Right.
You're
Right.
like, what's in it for me? What's the value that I'm getting out of this, right? So I think instead of talking about yourself, and a lot of companies might kind of drop the ball on this when they're like, oh, we're gonna have a webinar and talk about how great we are, and we're gonna show our product and stuff. And it's like, well, no, they might have some interest, but they're not down the funnel in the demo. Like they want to understand what you know about the market that would suggest why they need a solution like the one you have. So I think the thought leadership needs to come first, and then you need to think about the funnel. And like you could do your 30-minute webinar talking about your solution when somebody says, that's what I want to hear. I think when the media covers it, it's third party, right? So it's typically an earned opportunity, and they have reach, you don't. They have
Right.
credibility, you don't. Not that you don't have it, but they have their
Right.
own
They have
reputation.
credibility from
Yeah.
their audience and everything. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, they have to do their due diligence for the audience. So they don't want to put bad content out there. They have to make sure that it's going to resonate and be meaningful to their audience. So when they're putting it out there, it's kind of seen in a different light. And then furthermore, and they even say this, even if you're going to buy media from a publication, you're not allowed to talk about yourself for 30 minutes. You have to talk about an industry topic, right? Because people need to connect with you and know how you can help them, not just who you are, what you do, and why they should buy from you.
Right. Right. Absolutely. It comes off completely differently when it comes from a third party like
Yeah.
that, you know.
Yeah.
So if you were an executive in sales or marketing at, say, a technology company, a
Mhm.
consulting firm, or an outsourced services company, something like that, um, what would be the two biggest pitfalls to avoid in your marketing outreach?
Two pitfalls to avoid. Um, well, I think automation has to be strategic and thought through. Um, it has to be crafted correctly. Like I
Right.
can tell you how many automated messages I get, and I'm like, did you mean to send that to me?
Me too.
Like
I
it's
know,
very
me too.
like
Yeah.
I'm like I think like you have to do things like we do automation, right? But we're like building this list and we're looking at this list and analyzing it and saying, are these the right people? Are we
Right.
segmenting the message? Are we providing value? We're not just like, let's go out to everybody in supply chain, right? We're looking at titles,
Right.
we're looking at companies, we're looking at sizes of those companies. So, and then you're looking at the message. Am I saying enough? Am I providing insight? Am I engaging them? Am I giving them something to digest? That has to be done correctly. So I think as you start to adopt automation, um, it's not like a one and done, right? Like you need to be thoughtful about it. And then I'd say the other thing is AI. So I talked to Aaron about this, and him being the chief content strategist, he's like, well, with AI, like people think that they could just, write this blog and it's great. And I was like, but they can't, right? And the reason why
Right.
is because AI doesn't know your brand. It doesn't know your tone. It's one day probably will, but today I'd be slow to embrace that. Like you cannot go, hey, ChatGPT, write me a blog on this topic and go copy and paste and off you go. Like it's going to miss depth. It's going to miss meaning. It's going to miss engagement, and it's going to be spotted, right? So I think the cautionary tale is embrace new technology like AI and automation, but do it in a thoughtful, strategic way. Like
Right. Absolutely.
copy and paste. You still have to put in the work.
You still do. I got a message not too long ago through email, and it literally said, "Do you know Andy at your company?"
You're like, I'm Andy.
I'm like, actually, that's me. And it said, you may be interested in this. What it's doing is it's pulling off of some keywords, this, that, and the other thing. But it was nonsensical. It says, "Hello, Andy. Do you know Andy at your
Andy?
company?" Really? That's me. Of course
Yep.
I know him.
Yep.
But it was just like you said, you've got to be thoughtful about it. And what you're saying can't be some robot trying to pull together stuff. You really have to be thoughtful with what you're putting in front of your potential customers.
Mhm.
You do not want that. What I just said.
No,
That is awful.
absolutely not.
No, so you have to be thoughtful about it. So, okay, I've got this one final question I ask all of my guests. So, it's just what would you say as a final word of advice for our friends out there listening or watching today?
Yeah, I was on a podcast the other day and this kind of came up, and I really think it's know your market. Like, know your market. If you're going to develop a solution for a market, understand their pain points, understand their challenges and what's keeping them up at night, and what their options are. There's just so much value in just making connections, having conversations, and knowing your market. Um, don't develop something because you think there's an opportunity.
Right.
Don't go on a whim. I think, talking to them, buyer personas, ICPs, things like that are important to really understand who they are. To make sure that if you're developing a solution, you have something that you could sell to them, that there's a need for it, that there's a market for it, not just like, oh, you know what? I think I'm going to carry this solution over to this market, because why not? So
Right.
like do the research, do the homework. It's worth it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I mean, we've all heard horror stories of somebody going out and spending millions of dollars on something that went flat. And it was
Yeah.
because there was not a market. And in some cases, they're just too early with that, right? But you would know that if you did some interviewing of some people and said, if I had this thing, would you use it? And that's a really, really good indicator. So,
Right.
oh man. Well, it's been a lot of fun working with you and your team, Jenny. I've seen results. We've created new opportunities from what we've done together, just for us, for one, but then also putting really awesome value attracting content in front of hundreds or thousands of the right buyers.
Mhm.
It's not rocket science. You're going to grow sales pipeline when you do those things.
Yes. Yes.
Absolutely.
I've seen it. I'm a client of it too.
Yep, we both use services of the other company, so it's been a lot of fun for myself as well, on our side, seeing what happens. So, thanks again for coming on the podcast today.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, that'll do it for our show today. Thanks for listening or watching, everybody, and we will see you again on the next one. Take care.